Hello there and welcome to Walker on the Wild Side. My name is Ben Walker and today I'm talking about sloths. Now everyone loves a sloth. They're cute, adorable, incredibly slow and, a little bit useless, as all the best creatures are. But did you know that many years ago there were massive giant sloths wandering around? Some reports of them being up to 6 meters tall. That is massive. 6 meters, that's roughly 3 of me. So between 6 meters and 12 foot, which is 4 meters, they don't like it to make it easy for us. But that is an incredible size for an animal, let alone a sloth. Now, unfortunately, these giant ground sloths were hunted to extinction about 10,000 years ago, which is roughly when humans managed to get over to the Americas. So once again, continuing our remarkable trail of destruction around the world. But anyway, I have some fun facts about the sloths for you guys. Hopefully you find them as interesting as I do. So, on to sloth fact number 1. I always like to start with a good poo fact, and the sloth poo fact is exceptional in my opinion. So, generally, sloths poo about once a week, sometimes even once a month. So this means all of this is building up over a long period of time. But the one species of sloth decides it doesn't want to poo from the safety of the tree. Instead, it climbs down to the floor and then it does what's called a sloth poo dance, where it wriggles its bum basically, and the size of this poo is 1/3 of the sloth's body weight is poo at this point, which is roughly 280% the size of a poo that would be expected from an animal that size. So it's a fantastical amount. It doesn't really make sense. But the reason that they only poo once a week or even once a month is because they're not very good at breaking down food. It takes them about 30 days to digest a leaf, which is not that efficient really. So all this digestive material builds up, and they have 4 stomachs. Now, when a sloth poos, all the stomachs actually shrink in size to excrete all of this digestive material in one big super poo, as it were. So, not the best way to do it, because they're actually very vulnerable when they're on the ground, as their fur is quite good camouflage in the treetops, but on the ground, not so much. So about half the fatalities in sloths happen when they're on the ground relieving themselves. So not one of nature's greatest designs, but surely one of the most interesting. So continuing that theme of food, it turns out that sloths can actually starve to death on a full stomach. Now this is because they're not very good at regulating their body temperature. So if they get too cold, for example, then they have special microbes in their stomachs which will then die. And now if they can't digest their food, because these microbes help them digest these leaves, because like I said, they're not very efficient. So if these microbes die, then they won't be able to digest all their food, and that means that they will starve to death on a full stomach, which once again, not a great design, nature. Well done you. So next, I'm going to talk about their eyesight. Now sloths have got a rare condition called rod chromomacy. Now this is when they don't have any cone cells in their eyes, which essentially means they're completely colorblind. So they just see things in black and white. Now, as well as this, they are not able to see in daylight. So very poor eyesight in dim light, and then in bright light, they're pretty much completely blind. Now, this may have something to do with their slow speed, as you can't exactly run around when you're trying to, or climb around fast when you're trying to go through all these treetops. It would be virtually impossible. But even if they do try and go fast, sloths are actually designed to fall out of trees. They can very easily survive falls of 100 foot, because that's what they were designed to do. So if you drop a sloth from 100 foot, it's going to be absolutely fine. And to put that into perspective, that's about 12 double-decker buses. That's a massive height. So it turns out that nothing really phases a sloth. So we know that the sloths are not very good at taking in energy. Their digestive system isn't really up to scratch, which means they have to conserve as much energy as possible. However, when you're crawling around in the trees, that's not very easy to do. So the sloths actually have special tendons that can lock in place, which means that they can hang upside down with no issues whatsoever, because these tendons will lock in place so they don't have to use any energy at all. Now you may think that this means that they're not going to be that strong, but sloths are incredibly strong with special muscle arrangements, which means that they are able to withstand, if they are holding onto a branch, then they're able to withstand the force of a jaguar trying to pull them off just by holding on. They're incredibly strong animals. In fact, if they were the same size as us, they'd be 30% stronger than we are now. So, turns out they're lazy and strong, which, if you ask me, is the ideal combination. However, this strength doesn't exactly convert into speed. So the maximum that a sloth's realistically going to travel in a day is about 40 meters. In fact, some sloths have been seen to be slower than snails, which is a bit depressing if you ask me. So snails, turtles, they are all faster than sloths. However, in water, they are much, much faster, up to 3 times faster than they are on land. So if a sloth's trying to get away, sometimes it will literally just jump into the water and swim away, because they are very, very strong swimmers thanks to those long front arms. So next we're going to talk about sloth fur. I'm sure we've all seen pictures of sloths with their backs covered in algae, and that's completely normal. It's actually a symbiotic relationship where both of the parties benefit. Now the sloth fur is very absorbent, so the algae goes in there and can absorb all the water and nutrients that the sloth fur has absorbed, and then in return the sloth actually eats the algae sometimes, and the algae provides a very good camouflage for when they're crawling around nice and slowly in the trees. But it's not just algae that will live on a sloth, no, so much more. There's special fungi which will go and move in there, and a single sloth can have up to 950 moths living in its fur. Can you imagine that? 950 moths living all over you. For me that's hell, but the sloths don't seem to mind anyway. So all in all, they are definitely at one with nature. So for my final fact of this video, we'll be talking about the age of sloths. Now that isn't some dystopian future where, sloths are taken over. I'm not sure they can move fast enough to do that. No, I'm just talking about how old they can get. So the oldest that a sloth's got to in captivity is about 50 years old. To me this seems very old really, and there's some argument saying how old they can actually get to in the wild. Now considering that they've got a few predators, but they're quite hard to find really, I guess. I don't really know how they survive this long, to be honest, considering how slow they move, but they obviously must be able to. So some people say that they can live about 20 years, whereas others say they can live well over the 50 of the oldest one in captivity. No one really knows. Now this is because it's actually quite difficult to keep track of them in the wild, so it's very hard to tell from when they're born to when they die, just to keep track of them all of that time. And obviously we haven't been tracking animals for long enough to figure out, well, with small trackers it is, to figure out how old they actually are when they die. So the best we can do is make an educated guess, and I'm going to guess it's somewhere around the same as the 50 years, but personally I have absolutely no idea. So thank you very much for watching this video. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed it. Feel free to comment, like, subscribe, all of those things. If there's something else you want me to discover basically, then feel free to comment below. Thank you very much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you guys again soon.